Jim Rogers built his life around momentum, a fast-paced property business, a thirst for adventure, and an unrelenting drive to be a positive support for his family. Jim, well, he was the glue holding it all together. But then things started slipping. Meetings blurred. He would forget names. Conversations faded. At first, he just wrote it all off to stress.
It was quite daunting to me, and I just felt a little bit overwhelmed as to what's happening. I was starting to think, is there some side effect? I was having a medication for high cholesterol, and I was thinking, is it a side effect of that? And it wasn't till much later, at some point, I went for a cardiologist appointment.
Mr. Rogers, the doctor will see you now.
The cardiologist sat me down in the room and started to do whatever she was going to do. They do heart rate or whatever it is they're going to do. And my phone was ringing. And it was annoying because it was ringing. I couldn't work out how to put it on silent or turn it off. So anyway, the call stopped and I sort of left it, and then it rang again. And she said, just turn your phone off. And I just couldn't work it out. And I ended up asking her, can you tell her, how do you, and she wouldn't. And she said, it's fine, take your time and just see if you can work it out. And she said, experiencing this sort of thing now and again. And I was saying, yes, like these are the weird things that are happening. And from that point, she then referred me to a memory clinic.
They did more tests and the weeks passed by, but Jim really wanted some answers. Then, a call from the neurologist.
I was truly hoping that they were going to say, look, you've got some sort of cognitive issue, we can do this medication, we can do this, let's get this damn well sorted. And when they said, we've reviewed your PET scans, etc., unfortunately, we can see that you have young onset Alzheimer's. It was almost an out-of-body experience. It's as though time stood still.
Jim Rogers was in his late 50s when he was diagnosed with younger onset Alzheimer's. But it's not the only challenge he's faced. Jim's life story is so full of twists and turns, love and loss. It is truly like a movie. I met him a year ago when I cast him as the co-host of a podcast about dementia that my company, Dead Set Studios, has been working on with Dementia Australia. And look, even though I've spent my whole career working on stories, this one, it just still blows me away. I'm Kelly Reardon and this is Curveball, a show about thriving in challenging times. Jim Rogers, before we talk about your diagnosis, I'm keen to go back to what brought you to Australia in the first place, because you're British. Tell me about Lorna. How did you two first meet?
Well, I knew Lorna for a long time, and so she was just a friend, good friend. And then as we got older, we both had the same interest in common of these VW Beetles, and hers was so shit, really. It was a tatty, and she'd got masking tape holding the headlights on. We used to go to these bug meets together. So between us, we started doing all this, and then we would go to the pub and we'd have a drink, or I'd drive and go and pick her up, and she'd drive and pick me up, and these things were lingering, and it got to the point where this was not just friends anymore. Like, the feelings for her, like all I wanted to do was be with her, and all I wanted to do was see her and spend time with her. And I remember distinctly one night dropping her off and we just kissed, and it changed everything.
So how old were you at the time?
I think I was about 19 or something like that, maybe 20.
So quite young, and you started a family not long after that?
We went and travelled for a while. We travelled all over the place, and we worked in crappy jobs in Greece. We had the time of our lives with our friends. It was great fun. We rented an old villa and stayed there for a few months. It was one of those with a washing line on the roof with all the T-shirts on it. We did all that, and when we got back, we are quite impulsive. We decided to get married, and I proposed to her. She said yes. And so we planned all this wedding quite quickly, and then it wasn't too far after there, we started a family, and Lorna had always wanted kids young, wanted to be a young parent, and we had a first child, then came the second child, and then a surprise one, a third child. So Millie, Harvey, and Daisy. And so these toddlers take a lot out of you, and we had 3 under 3.
Woo.
And we were exhausted, and there was never ever a week where one hadn't got tonsillitis or a cold or something. And if you're familiar with the UK weather, I can't even explain with toddlers how awful it was, because you could never go anywhere. You could never go to the park. You could never do it. You just could never get out. And a friend of Lorna's, her son had emigrated to Australia, and something put a little spark in there, and we just decided, let's look into it. And the more we mentioned it, the more people thought we were mad, and it's sort of, I think there's a devilment in us, or a little rebellion, and we just pursued it. And before you knew it, we'd been accepted. So we lived very happily in Perth, and the kids flourished.
And so how old would they have been at that point?
They were about, I think, 3, 4 and 5, something like that. And Lorna fell in love with Australia, like hook, line and sinker. I was so shocked because she was quite a homebody, and where we came from in the UK was very British countryside. And when I look back in hindsight, I think, what were we thinking? So immature and stupid. But the adventure was still like a magnet. It was drawing us.
So this is your idyllic family life. You've got the 3 kids, you've found a job, you're living somewhere that's amazing. Lorna's living her dream life, but it wasn't to be for much longer.
I can remember vividly her saying to me one night in the bathroom, this mole's really annoying. She was in the bar shaving her legs. It was on her calf, and she eventually went and had it checked and saw a GP, and the GP said, it's fine, go away. So about 6 months later, she kept complaining, this mole is really irritating. And I said, go and see them again, say, it's not right. And this doctor was very switched on and straight away said, that needs to come off. Unfortunately, once it came back from being tested, that's when they said it was a melanoma, and we need to do what's called a sharp bite, which is take a chunk from the calf to make sure everything is removed so you can go on your merry way and hopefully there's nothing to worry about. So that's what happened, but it planted a seed in her head of worry. And when we had the final chat with the specialist who'd done it, she said, can you guarantee that it's gone? And the specialist said, no, we can't guarantee. Nobody can guarantee. So she just kept feeling, what if it's in there?
Yeah, a little on edge.
Yeah, all the time. It was troubling her. And this made her worry, and this made her anticipate what could happen in life, and it shocked us. So to cut a long story short, as you know, I can chat. We decided that we would go back to the UK. A little while later, Lorna was walking along with her jodhpurs one day and put her hand in her pocket, and she stopped really suddenly and just said, oh shit, like I've got a lump. Straight away, she had to have drains put on, operation done, and they removed
Like the lymph
the
nodes.
lymph nodes and all sorts of things in that area, and it had travelled there. And so we went through all of that, and that was devastating. That was before the Christmas, and I remember the kids lifting a nightie up and looking at all the bags which are draining the lymph nodes. But she was strong. I won't say she had it together. It was mentally breaking for her because it was very worrying now. I was worrying terribly, but we were both brave facing each other. And so she was saying to me, oh, it's fine, it'll be fine. But I think she on the side was falling apart about it, and I was doing the same. And she was, quite in pain. I noticed those things, and they sent her for a routine checkup following on from the surgery, and it was all routine. My parents had the children. We went down there and they talked her through everything and said it's fine. We think we're okay. But as she was talking everything, I looked at her, and sometimes you see something in somebody and you just think you really don't look yourself, like you look really unwell. So we came out at that point, and she actually got into this wheelchair and walked through the hospital to walk through the hospital, and I pushed her, and I remember thinking, God, she would never get in it, never get. She's quite a proud type person, she just wouldn't, but she's got nothing left to give. She was just so exhausted. And so as we sort of left the hospital, I just had this epiphany of, no, like this is rubbish. I'm just not happy with their assessment. So I marched back into casualty, and Lauren was going, what are you doing? She hated kicking up a fuss. And I said to this doctor, this is rubbish. Like, I don't feel as though she's getting the care. He sort of tried to pacify me off, and I said, I'm not having it. I am not leaving until something's been done. So anyway, they did all of these scans, and straight away from these scans, the results showed multiple areas it had travelled to. There was masses in areas. It had gone to her liver. It had gone to the kidneys. It had gone all over.
What was the prognosis at that point?
They felt she hadn't got long at all. It's already in the advanced stages, and the pain was growing literally by the hour. I was saying to him, you're wrong. This is ridiculous. We've just come from a routine appointment. We've just had a scan. Oh, what are you talking about? This is nuts. And he was saying, no, I'm very sure I can see from the situation that, this is advanced so far that we don't feel as though she has very long. And it turned out only to be a few days until...
Days
that she actually passed away. And for me, it was just, I can't even tell you how unbelievable the story is and how unreal it is in your life. It would be like...
Well, you're going along with a happy family, lots of things in your life going right. All of a sudden, there's this bit
like
of a
a
medical thing, and then you're literally wheeling her out of the hospital.
It was literally a car crash situation, and all her family were at the hospital suddenly, and we were all there. People were sleeping the night in the hospital. Her friends were there. I had to weigh up, what about the children? I had to weigh up, what does Lorna know? Does she know? There's no way in my mind that she knew the severity at that point. I was telling her, they're organising your meds, they're going to get this pain to go away. She was in a lot of pain. They're going to calm the pain down. They're going to get you right. Then we're going to go home strongly making this message go to her, that we were going to be leaving this hospital and go back home to the kids.
And how are the kids coping? How old are they now?
Well, the kids are sort of 5, 6 and 7, I think. And my parents had got the children at home. Lorna did not want them coming to the hospital. And seeing her hitched up to a machine, she'd got morphine drips and all sorts of things on her. And it was awful. But inside me, I knew what they were telling me. So I was having to do this whole trying to keep it going for her mental ability to handle this. Because, I mean, how would you cope with that? I've questioned myself so many times on this. And did I do the right thing? Should I have took the children down? Or, but I tried to put her at the forefront. And I felt the mental anguish for her would be so horrific that she wouldn't have known what you would do. They allowed me to get into bed with her and to lie with her and bring, music in and set the mood as gently. By this time, she was sort of slowly moving into like a coma state. And they prepared me what would happen when she started to slide away. And it was just the worst thing you could ever go through. And it was like an out-of-body experience watching a movie.
Lorna, of course, did pass away a matter of days later, which seems absolutely incredible. That leaves you with 3 children in primary school and you having to become a single dad in a small English country town raising 3 kids. How did you manage that? What was your day-to-day life like?
It was just somebody coming in and smashing your entire world up. And you had 3 young children who were heartbroken and distraught and trying to come to terms with believing this was even true, to my own grief of my world being shattered and losing her, and then dealing with the day-to-days and trying to keep the children in some form of normality, which is what counsellors suggested I should do. The sooner the better was to distract them by trying to have them in routine.
I know you pretty well as well, and there's being a parent and being a parent during a traumatic time. But you have quite high standards. I've seen you with your kids now who are adults, but like everything is in its place and done and everyone's looked after and everyone looks immaculate. Did you push yourself a little bit?
Yeah. So I became Superman, super dad. Like obviously they're heartbroken and they had their own devastating, things in their head to cope with. But their world, I fought tooth and nail to make sure their world stayed as good as it possibly could be. So everything from their food, like to their clothes, to their schoolwork, everything, I was going crazy to make sure everything was done. And those kids were strolling down the street, the smartest kids in the street. And I was upbeat and telling them lovely things and trying to lift their world all the time. It was a really tough thing to do.
Because essentially, that's great for the children, and I'm sure that really set them up to, recover as best as you can when your mother has passed away. But there's a toll on you in that. You can't do that forever. And as I understand it, your parents eventually stepped in and said, Jim, you are working yourself into an early grave now. You've got to take a break.
Yeah, my parents were awesome parents. But I think they could see that I was struggling mentally, my mental health was really not in a good place. I had a facade that was great for everyone and everything publicly, but I was in a heap privately. They were like, right, you're having a holiday. We're booking you a holiday. You're going on holiday. And I was like, I don't want to go. I'm not going to go. The kids won't like it. It's not good for them. And before you knew it, I was on a plane and I'd gone. And they booked me this fantastic hotel, beautiful place. And this was in the Canary Islands, and it really magnified it because a lot of people were there on holiday. So they were with their partners and having lovely times, or with their children and their partners. And I was so angry at the world. I hated everyone.
And you're also on your own, and holidays aren't designed for people on their own. Like, you go into a dining room and you don't want to eat alone. You don't want to, you go out to the beach or whatever on your own.
Yeah, it was just a chore. It was just a chore. And that's how I felt in my head. And anyway, I lay by the pool and read my book and whatever. And I met this group of people in the hotel that were really lovely to me. You should chat to people in the hotel and they were like, you on your own type of thing. And anyway, these people had made an effort a few times. And, you sort of feel as though you're being rude. You're actually being a bit rude now. And in the end, I thought, pull yourself together, go over, be sociable and chat. And I chatted with these people. They were really lovely. This one guy I ended up chatting to who was really friendly and funny, and we were drinking and laughing. It was just great. And then I asked him if he'd got a girlfriend or, was married or whatever. And he was like, oh, no, I'm gay. And I was really shocked. And I think mostly because I didn't really know anybody who was gay, and I didn't really, I'd not really come across that, or especially somebody who was so confident, who talked just, yeah, I'm gay, that's it.
Yeah, and this is like the early 90s, is it?
Yeah, so it was really, he was just great. Like, I just clicked with him. And suddenly I was like all this, like, happy, feeling a bit happy, which was complete opposite to what I had been feeling. I just found myself thinking about him all the time. That feeling when you just keep thinking about somebody. It was as though he'd done a blow dart and put something into my head. And then when we flew back, it grew more and more and more, to the point where I was talking to him for hours and hours and hours. And this would be the highlight of my day. Like, I started to be happy to get up in the morning because I wanted to talk to him and share my day, what had happened. And he was just, I can't even really put it into words how I just connected with him. It's just, there was something there, and I just loved every word that fell out of his mouth. I just really fell for him.
And this is interesting too, because, sometimes you can go on a holiday, you can meet someone on a holiday, everything's idyllic because you're in the Canary Islands and the food's great and the beach is happening, and it can be wonderful, right? But then you come back to reality.
Of course.
You come away from your holiday into real life, you're back with the 3 kids. Sometimes it's just a holiday fling and it falls apart.
Of course.
So what made you keep connecting with Tyler? Obviously you found a connection, but you're also a man from a fairly traditional English village in the early 90s with 3 small children.
Yeah,
he has no children.
Yep.
Why did you keep pursuing him?
I do not know. I cannot even put it into words. I'm such a fool. Like, I can't tell you how hard I tried to not be involved with him. I was the president of the Parents and Friend Association at the primary school. I was friends with the headmaster. All my mates were up the pub. Like, all my people lived in this town. Like, I've just lost my wife, like, a year and a half ago. Like, I can't begin to have a relationship with him.
So what did you do?
We lived 100 miles apart, and I'd go down there, and my parents would look after the kids, and my dad would say, whoever she is, she's not. She's definitely caught your eye. And I used to play everything down and be like, oh my God. Like, if he knew, he would die. And I'd go down and meet him and have this amazing time down in London. And he came up one time. We took the children to a place where they've got like a restaurant and then a play area, and the kids played and everything. It was lovely to the kids, lovely. And I'd had a few, not girlfriends, so to speak, but I'd had a few liaisons with a few.
Yeah, you dated a couple of women.
Yeah, a couple of girls who had been lovely. But as I watched the kids being smothered by these women, as though it was Lorna's place, it made me feel uncomfortable. This one time I decided in my head, no, this isn't going to happen. We're done. So I took Ty for a walk afterwards. My mum and dad had got the children, and I took Ty for a walk, and I said, look, this is amazing, and you're amazing, and I love being with you, and blah, blah, blah. But this is not going to be my life. Like, I can't do this. Like, I've got 3 kids. I just can't do it. I don't want to ruin my whole world and have a bloke move in my house. I'm not having it, Ty. And he was the most respectful, kind person. Of course he was. Would have been a lot better if he'd have told me to F off or something. I would have been happy with that. And he drove back to London, and I was like broken. I was very emotionally broken because it was the one thing that was making me feel so great. So this wonder drug that was taken, I just like
thrown it away.
Back. Yeah. And then he just thought, sod this, turned the car around, came all the way back and knocked my door. Do you know what I mean? And I was sat on the sofa, like, really depressed. And he walked in, and my world just lit up again that he was back. And he just said, no, I'm not having this. I absolutely know that this is what is meant to happen. I'm really sorry. I've come back up. It's like, it's not going to end like this. I said to him, the only way this could really ever work is if the house next door came up for sale. And the next door neighbours had lived there for 15 years or whatever. And we pulled into the close from somewhere we'd been. And I kid you not, as we pulled in, the guy was just putting the sign up on the driveway. And we both stopped in our tracks and looked at each other, and we were like, oh my God.
On Curveball, my guest is Jim Rogers. He's the host of the podcast Hold the Moment. It's a show by Dementia Australia, created by my company, Dead Set Studios, and it helps people navigate life with a dementia diagnosis. In a moment, we'll find out if that sold sign on the house next door would be the start of something so much bigger for Tyler and Jim Rogers. I'm Kelly Reardon, and this is Curveball. I met Jim Rogers when I cast him as the co-host of a podcast called Hold the Moment. It's a show that Dead Set Studios creates for Dementia Australia. Jim is living with younger onset Alzheimer's. I've got to say though, Jim's whole life story is one wild ride. After his wife Lorna's death, Jim was raising his 3 young children until he took a holiday overseas. He met a man named Tyler and they hit it off instantly. So Jim, surely this for sale sign on the house next door to yours is a bit of a stars aligning moment. But Tyler's whole life is in London, so what are the chances he can actually even move next door to you?
He literally rang me from London and said, you know the house? You'll see a sold sign going on because I've bought it. And I was, honest to God, what are you talking about? Like, we haven't discussed this at length. You can't just go and buy a house. This is ridiculous. But he'd bought it. And time passed and he moved in. And before you knew it, there was a panel in the back garden. His dad came up and his dad said, I think this panel slips out. And it slipped out. And before you knew it, the kids had this massive garden because it was 2 with this entrance in and out. And Ty was living out of his house from the front and I was out of mine from the front. And we were literally going out our front doors into our cars and going in and out of this very nosy Parker-ish.
Traditional English.
Can you imagine the curtain twitching type of street it was on? Lovely people, but of course everybody knows everybody's business. Now at this point, the kids knew nothing. I was hiding it from the kids. I didn't even know how I was handling this. All I knew is I wanted to be with him and I didn't know how I was going to make it work. So Britain's cold, right? He would be getting out of bed at 4 a.m, sneaking downstairs round the back garden and going into his house to a bed with an electric blanket that was on a timer to come on to heat it so he could slide into bed to then get up for 6 to go to work in London. Commitment. He kept his job.
Oh my goodness.
And did that for ages before he got a transfer up to nearer where we were. But this guy, like the effort that he put in, never complained, was amazing to the children. He was just dad's friend to them who they loved.
But these kids are growing older. At some point, you have to tell them, actually, there's something more here. How did you go about that with the kids?
Well, we moved out to the countryside and bought a place that was much bigger. And it was a screen, really, for us to survive because we felt the prying eyes wouldn't be there. And so we had this facade and we worked out of there. And Ty and I are always very honest and genuine. And we said, if the kids ever... We actually had bedrooms that adjoined. So we had a doorway into each other's bedroom. And we actually lived in separate beds in our own bedroom. But we had a connecting door. And this is how we were running this secret life.
In your own house.
In our own home. And I'm telling you now, as if I hadn't already gone through hell, like this was also on your nervous system and your mind. How we did it, I just don't know, because kids aren't stupid.
No.
And eventually they see a little this or see a little that. And as they've got older, they were like, we saw you once together, or we did this, or we saw that, or we guessed a clue, or whatever. But one day we were driving down the road and Millie said to me, Millie's my eldest daughter, and she said to me, do you know, it's really funny at school because one of my friends, her mum's with a lady. So my friends really got 2 mums. And I was like, oh, that's nice. And what do you think about that? You know, and it all came out very naturally. And then she said, yeah, in a way, it's like if you and Ty were our 2 dads. But you know, when it's said in such a way that there's a weight to it, that you feel...
She's trying it on.
She's trying it on.
Yep.
She's asking me indirectly. And I really vividly remember pulling over and we sat there and I turned to her and I said, look, I would never lie to you. And you're actually right. Ty is my partner and I love him and we're so happy together and we've sort of kept it sheltered from you because we didn't want you to be exposed to other kids taking the mick out of you and pointing at you. We felt like you've been through so much, but to be truthful, I was putting myself first because I couldn't cope with everything expected of me in my life without the happiness he was making me feel.
And did the kids get it?
The kids completely got it. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't just all,
roses.
Candles and roses. They were devastated. They were shocked. In fact, I remember Daisy, being the youngest, was so quite angry about it, saying, why have you had to ruin everything? We've got this fab house. It's great with Ty and everything. And it's all changed now. You've changed the concept. So there was a period of them being really shocked. And I think in later life, I don't know if it was the right decision to hide it from people and protect them, or whether we should have just been manned up and just took it on the chin.
So what made the two of you decide, because, the kids were getting older, and then at one point you decide it might be time to go back to Australia for you, and Tyler had never lived in Australia.
Kel, you tell me, what did make that happen? I can tell
Life wasn't crazy enough as it was.
No, I just am one of those people that likes to go around and really mess it up, make it hard. You've got 2 roads, and that one's got a sign saying... plain sailing, enjoy the ride, and I'll choose the one with all the humpbacks and potholes and winding bends. And
curveballs.
curveballs. You couldn't say it any better than that. We had some friends come over from Australia who were great friends of Lorna's, and they were wonderful. And I had arranged to pick them up from the airport. We were very excited about them coming. The kids were very excited because they loved them in Australia. During this holiday, they told the kids all about Australia, all about, do you remember this? Lorna used to take you here. Do you remember that? And of course, the kids had no memory of much, and they loved hearing it. And I think it brought her alive for them. And there was this instant bond, and the kids would be chatting and chatting and chatting about Australia. And I had made it quite clear that I was never going back. I never even ever wanted to visit again. Like, it was a real painful thing for me to tap back into. And I'd made it clear, and I didn't want a bar of it. So I kept saying, yeah, whatever. Like, no, that's not going to happen. But Ty and the kids sort of ganged up on me and started saying, you're being mean, really, by not listening to our views. And, you know, you should be looking at the greater good of all of us. It's not just about you. And it was really well put across pitch. And this would be debated at the dinner table and whatever. And so before you knew it, we'd moved back over. The kids slotted back in with the friends they knew before. This was our new adventure. We were in Australia.
So you, Tyler, the three kids, you're all here. You continue to raise these beautiful children together. They grow up into beautiful adults. I know both the girls are married. Each of them have two gorgeous kids. And now you've got these wonderful grandchildren. Your son's getting on with life. Everything's looking pretty good. You've got your property development career happening in Sydney. You're wheeling and dealing. And, you know, life's pretty good again, right?
It was bloody good.
And then you start to notice a couple of things at work.
Yeah, at work I was working for a big company and a lot of property responsibility, as in making big decisions and advising people as well. You can't make big mistakes with these things. I was starting to make mistakes. I don't generally make mistakes. I'm quite organised as a person. I was starting to notice that things seemed foggy to me, and I wasn't grasping things the way that I normally would. I was going into meetings and forgetting what the meeting was about. I was having conversations on the phone, and then I was forgetting those conversations. So people starting from scratch and going, we've talked about this. Why are you not remembering it? I was finding I was having to take all these notes and be very note anal all the time, writing everything down. And it was getting to the point where, as well, I was going to face-to-face meetings with people. I had no idea I'd met this person at all.
There were obviously things you were noticing. Was Tyler noticing? Were the people at work noticing?
No, a couple of colleagues had said to me, you have met them. Like, I was in the meeting you were at there with, you know. And so they were saying, you should get this looked at. Ty really wasn't noticing anything. He knew from me I was saying, this isn't right, that's not right. But I think Ty always is very good at putting, well, that's because of this, or, oh, well, I'm sure that's that. I forget stuff, you know.
Yeah, of
and
course.
He would trivialise.
It's very you can explain it away so easily.
And life's stressful, and he'd go, oh, God, like, I'm like that too. And eventually you talk yourself out of it. And I mentioned it to my GP over and over and over again on numerous occasions when I visited for, I don't know, cholesterol tablets,
blood pressure
whatever.
test. Yeah.
And my GP would go, oh, yeah, absolutely. This is a little test. We'll do it on you, you know. And he would read something out. I'd have to remember this or that. Often I was fine, got it right. And he used to go, Jim, you're fine. Like, trust me, you're fine. Don't worry about it. In the end, I sort of almost felt as paranoia, this was. I went along one day to my cardiologist, and the cardiologist said to me, your phone's ringing, and can you turn it off? And I said, oh, absolutely sorry. You know, it's quite rude. And anyway, I think the call stopped, and then it rang again. And it was ringing again. And she sort of looked at me as if to say, I did ask you nicely, like, can you turn it off? And I couldn't do it. And so I was holding my phone and staring at the screen and thinking...
couldn't you could see the buttons, but you didn't know which one to push?
I could see the phone, just like you'd look at your phone. I don't know why I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. It was just like a blank that came across my brain, and I was staring at it as if to say, I don't even know what you do with it. I actually passed to the phone. I went, can you pop it on? You know, I was so mortified. Like, who doesn't know how to turn a bloody phone off? It's so stupid. And she said, no, take your time. And she watched me. She was so switched on. And she said, Jim, are you experiencing blanks like this? Are you having other issues? And then that was it. She opened the floodgate and I was saying, oh my God, like at work, like I didn't recognise this person. And then somebody called me and then we had a whole conversation. I never met them before and we had met. And she referred me on to a memory clinic in Sydney. And I went to this clinic and they do loads of testing. So that led them to say, you've got cognitive issues, which I was shocked, even at that. So then they sent me off to have more testing, and then they sent me to have brain scans, and then the appointment came for me to speak to the neurologist. They asked if Ty could be there at the appointment, to which I thought, right, that's odd. Why would they want you there, Ty? Like I was saying this to him and he was going, maybe they just want me to be there to hear whatever it is. And I was like, like I think. We sat there and the neurologist explained. She was very direct and she said, you have younger onset Alzheimer's. And it's in the very early stages, but you can see the amyloid build-ups there, and we don't know how quickly this is going to develop. Some people could go for years and be fine. Some people can nosedive rapidly.
How old were you at the time?
So I was, I have to get this right because Ty told me that I got it right, 55.
55.
So
this, it's incredible. I mean, as the name suggests, younger onset Alzheimer's, but 55 is incredibly young.
yes, and for me to just be at the top of my game, really, at the time when I was really enjoying, you know, in your career, you work bloody hard to get up, and just as it's all great, you know, and I'm feeling great, and the kids are independent, and you're feeling financially that you've got there, and everything was great, and Ty's great, and so this curveball just gets whacked in the face. And I remember the neurologist talking to me and it almost going silent, like my brain wouldn't take in anymore. Well, Ty immediately was emotional, I could see, and so I think he had more understanding than me. But straight away they pass you on then to the next person who's going to explain, what does this mean, what happens from here, etc. And I said, stop. I need to, I can't talk anymore. I have to stop. So we called it a day and they said, you know, we can rearrange talking at another time and stuff like that. But Ty and I then were so devastated. We started looking into what it's about, and it was a real shock. I can't even tell you at the time. It changes everything suddenly, that you look at yourself so differently and you think, like, what? Like, Alzheimer's? Like, I'm 55, what the hell? Meanwhile, Daisy was 9 months pregnant and giving birth to Archie, our grandson, with Mario, her partner, and they're in the hospital. We had to pull ourselves together and go down and see Daisy and Mario. And, you know, it's a wonderful new life coming in, and it wasn't until a little while later that we really started to come to terms with what's happened and where do we go from here. And when you start to read people's experiences and their stories and you watch stuff, you really start to feel the weight of this diagnosis.
Because you've got your diagnosis quite early.
I'm very lucky to get
I was going to say, is that a help or is it a hindrance? What's the pros and cons of that?
At the time, I was devastated and I spiraled right down into why me? Like, I've been through enough. Like, I shouldn't have to deal with this. And I was really quite pissed off with it all.
Yeah, fair enough.
And my neurologist was great because she sort of said to me, I tell people that they've got a tumour and they've got weeks to live. Like, you have got younger onset Alzheimer's, which is terrible, but it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. We just don't know how quickly it's going to happen. Your mind can really, run away with you. And I was monitoring myself and I felt anxiety about everything. And as I forget things, I'd be thinking, it's getting worse. Like, I'm getting worse. And I almost convinced myself that I'd be dead in 3 years or something like that. I think it was so overwhelming. But that didn't happen. And I came to terms with it. And my neurologist recommended me to go to Dementia Australia. And I reached out to them. And they were brilliant. They put me on a Living Well with Dementia course, taught me that you have to go and do your will and you have to do things like power of attorney and who's going to be responsible for the decisions about your health. And if you're to go into a home, when would you go into a home and whose decision is that and which home did you want to go into and how do you want your funeral to be? Like, these things are ridiculous to give to somebody who's fully fine, working, driving, just doing normal life. And suddenly all that was snatched from under my feet. My license was taken off me. They said that the type of Alzheimer's that they felt affected my decision making, and so I could potentially go through a red light as opposed to a green light, that sort of thing, which stopped me in my tracks. And I happily handed over my license because I thought, what am I going to do? Drive around with a grandchild in the car and then kill somebody and then kill my grandchild and then it's all my fault. And so I accepted that was that. But it was like losing a leg, like my independence was gone. And I felt as though I was making mistakes at work. And then Ty and I discussed it. And I thought, why am I working? Like, I've done well in life. What am I chasing? Why do I need all of this? I need to change my life and I need to retire and be at home and, I don't know, play golf or do whatever it is you're supposed to do.
And I guess going to the Dementia Australia course, because it is, and that's how we know each other, because we've been recording our wonderful podcast called Hold the Moment.
Which is fantastic,
which is such a great resource, which Jim co-hosts with Hamish McDonald. But the thing that's really great, I think, about Dementia Australia is they give you those resources to say, look, you can bury your head in the sand and not do all of this, or you can actually proactively take control of this and start to make some of the decisions, early. You and Tyler seem to have jumped into a very sort of positive approach to trying to get all your affairs in order.
So right. And really, I was wallowing, and Ty did do a little shake up with me and said, listen, if you don't draw a line and step over it, you are missing right now. And so Dementia Australia helped me to do that a lot, and they were very supportive. And that led to them saying, would you be interested in doing some advocacy work for us? Because we think it'd suit you. We feel like you have a mouth that could be put to work, and would you be interested? And then Dementia Australia asked me, would I like to take part in a live chat with Dementia Australia, which included Dead Set Studios, which were going to be creating this amazing podcast. And so I said, sure, yeah, I would love to do that. And so I joined probably 30 people online or whatever it was. Yourself was there?
My podcast production house, Dead Set Studios, had already decided we would make this podcast with Dementia Australia. And one of the things that they said was, nothing for them without them. We've got to involve people with dementia at the very heart of this show. So lots of guests who've got dementia and all different types of dementia. And so it's less about, clinical experts telling you what to do and more about sharing stories from the very mouths of the people who are going through this. And I was like, this is great. I love this. We should cast a person with dementia as the host. But I've made a lot of podcasts. I think I've launched 50 different series over time. And so I'm used to working with, in inverted quotes, professional broadcasters at the ABC and places like that. But I was like, I guess this could work. Thinking, will it work? Someone with dementia hosting a podcast. Anyway, we turn up at this meeting, which is on Zoom because that's where we kind of live in now. There are about 30 people, as Jim says. And we're meeting all together and we're hearing different people's stories and their experiences. And through the screen, I'm not joking, I'm sitting in my house on Zoom, and this person just amid the 30 who just jumps out of the screen, of course, is you. Just all this personality just coming through the screen. So I called Dementia Australia and I said, look, can I give you my professional opinion here? This man, Jim, whoever he is, can we get him back on the phone? Because he is definitely the host. So then they called you and said, how about it?
I couldn't believe it. They said, I thought they were going to give me a bit of feedback, and I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. So I was so shocked. And then I found out it was with the amazing Hamish MacDonald, who is the renowned journalist and the presenter of the project, So hold the moment. Your baby was born, and it's been an absolute raging success, and it's done its job so well in spreading the message to so many people about the stigmas of dementia. It's touched people who feel alone, who have dementia. They're able to listen to it. People who are older can sit quietly and listen to it in their darker times, or carers who feel lost, who don't really know anybody in that field. Those people have got great comfort. It gives you tips and tricks and things from dementia and all the support you could want all the way through, hosted by me and the very funny Hamish MacDonald, who has become a great friend, really, that I really enjoy doing this with now. So it's grown and grown. Of course, then through your guidance and advice, I ended up being invited to go and do the Imperfects. And I think I finally had jitters and came to you and said, do you think it's the right thing to do? And you said to me, I wouldn't have suggested it if I didn't know that these guys are perfect for you to tell your story. And so I did it. And I think it's getting over 800,000
it's
on
approaching,
TikTok.
It's approaching a million listens. The Imperfects is
incredible.
A top 10 podcast, and your story I tried to look at the comments on some of their social media posts. I couldn't scroll to the bottom. There were just thousands and thousands of thousands of people.
It's been the overwhelming support and love from those comments have meant so much to my children. I'm so grateful for people who actually found me interesting to listen to. I can't believe half the people didn't fall asleep, know.
We've just heard this story. It's an incredible story.
I did say to you off air, this is only part of the story. There is a lot I could tell you, which I will not.
There'll be a part 2 one day. But congratulations, because I think this is a really great story of resilience, of positivity. Like every time you fall down, you get back up. And the other thing that I think it's so powerful is just the love around you. So no matter what happens, there are these people like your husband, Tyler, your kids, Dementia Australia, Hamish MacDonald. Now there's all this love and support around you. And of course, the statistics now for dementia is, unfortunately, it's growing as we sort of age and our aging population happens. More and more people are going to have dementia. In fact, millions of people have a relative with dementia.
So terrible. And it is, I believe, it's the number one killer now in Australia for women. And the statistics around the world is just phenomenal. Of course, people are living longer and dementia is so more prevalent and talked about. But for me, I wanted to sort of shout hello. Like, this happens to people like me, like you, at the top of your game, somebody just pulling that rug from underneath you. It's not all about memory and forgetfulness. My neurologist explained this. It's about mood and lethargy and all sorts of things. Everybody my sleep deprivation is so bad and my dreams are so vivid. And my friend who I was on the course with, he told me about his hallucinogenic dreams. But on the whole, I'm fine. And people go, oh, you don't look like you've got dementia.
And people listening to this will think, how can this man have dementia?
That's
because
right.
You are so articulate, well-spoken. You have a lot of recall on your life stories.
My recall in history is brilliant. I know everything, really, within reason. It's my day-to-day memory that is bad. So I can go into a room 20 times a day and it is exhausting. And you know that feeling where you walk in and you go, why have I come into this room? I used to get so angry and agitated about it all. But now I literally would come into this room and just, I'm like, why am I here? And rather than get angry and agitated now, I like to try have this positive ethos. And so I've learned to adjust to it. And the biggest thing about this disease is it is the fear of when is it going to kick in. I think we all have something to worry about, like people think, have I got something wrong with me or could I have something happen to me? And I know sometimes it's obvious to me, but I try not to. And Ty will go, well, you have got Alzheimer's. Do you know what I mean? When I have a reason where I'm saying, what is wrong with me? And he'll go, you've got Alzheimer's. And I go, oh, yeah, I forgot that sort of thing. So, yeah, I'm very blessed that I got diagnosed early, almost by accident. All these different doors keep opening. I'm a bit of a people pleaser and I go, yeah, okay, I'll do that. All these things lead to nice things, nice people. So it's been fun and interesting, and I've got to meet you.
Well, it's such a pleasure to have met you as well, Jim. It's been so great working with you. Hold the Moment is the podcast. You can find it on the Dementia Australia website. Thank you for being part of the Curveball podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And do not forget, Kelly Reardon, we are having a wine and you've agreed to that. So
twist my arm, I guess. You can catch up on any of our previous Curveball episodes at curveballshow.com. And look, if you know a leader, whether they're from business, the arts, the sporting world, please do suggest a guest by sending me an email, hello@deadsetstudios.com. Curveball's produced by Dead Set Studios on the lands of the Turrbal and Yuggera people. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. This episode was produced by Lucy McAfee.